The Jonestown Massacre. Welcome, listeners, to a chilling exploration of one of the darkest chapters in modern history, the Jonestown Massacre. Imagine a serene jungle setting where the promise of paradise descends into a nightmare. This is the story of how over 900 souls met a tragic end under the spell of a charismatic yet deranged leader, Jim Jones. Join us as we delve into the heart of darkness, uncovering the eerie events that led to one of the most horrifying mass tragedies of our time. The Shadows of Jonestown, a haunting descent into madness. Our tale begins with Jim Jones, a man of fervent charisma and unyielding ambition. Born in Indiana in 1931, Jones grew up fascinated by religion and social issues. By the 1950s, he had established himself as a preacher who championed racial integration and social justice. His church, the People's Temple, was a beacon of hope for many, drawing a diverse congregation during a time of segregation and civil unrest in America. Yet, beneath this veneer of piety and altruism lurked a man obsessed with power and control. Jones's sermons grew darker, filled with apocalyptic visions and dire warnings. He claimed to be the reincarnation of Jesus, Buddha, and Lenin, a messiah destined to lead his followers to salvation. His ability to captivate and manipulate his congregation became his most potent weapon. By the 1970s, the People's Temple had grown from a modest congregation into a formidable movement. But as Jones's influence expanded, so did his paranoia. He began to view the outside world as a threat, a place full of enemies waiting to tear down his dream. It was in this climate of fear that Jones decided to create a new sanctuary, far removed from the prying eyes of the American public. In 1974, Jones moved his followers to a remote area in Guyana, South America. The settlement, nestled deep within the dense, oppressive jungle, was named Jonestown. This location, chosen for its isolation, was meant to be a haven, a place where Jones and his followers could build a utopian society free from the corruption of the outside world. At first glance, Jonestown appeared to be a success. The settlers worked tirelessly, constructing homes, schools, and farms. They toiled under the hot sun, their sweat mingling with the rain that perpetually soaked the ground. The jungle, with its verdant canopy and humming insects, seemed to embrace their efforts. Yet, beneath this surface of productivity, a darker story was unfolding. As time passed, the idyllic vision of Jonestown began to fray. The charismatic veneer of Jones's leadership began to crack, revealing a man consumed by paranoia and control. Reports of harsh discipline and psychological manipulation began to trickle out, but they were often dismissed as mere grievances of disgruntled former members. Inside Jonestown, the atmosphere was one of constant surveillance and fear. Jones's followers were subjected to intense indoctrination and brutal punishment for any signs of dissent. The jungle that once seemed so alive now felt suffocating and oppressive, echoing with the whispers of those who dared to question. By late 1978, the situation in Jonestown had reached a boiling point. The sense of impending doom was palpable. The outside world had begun to take notice, and concern about the settlement's conditions was growing. In response to mounting pressure, Congressman Leo Ryan decided to visit Jonestown. On November 17, 1978, Congressman Ryan arrived in Jonestown, accompanied by a small group of journalists and concerned relatives. The delegation was greeted with a facade of false cheerfulness. Jones's followers, instructed to present an image of contentment, welcomed the visitors with smiles that masked their inner turmoil. During the visit, Ryan and his party were shown around the settlement. The facade of happiness was evident, but so was the underlying tension. Some members of the settlement, seeing Ryan's visit as a potential escape, approached him and expressed their desire to leave. The atmosphere grew increasingly uneasy as the delegation prepared to depart. As Ryan's group made their way to the airstrip to board their plane, a group of armed followers, under Jones's orders, ambushed them. The airstrip, normally a place of mundane activity, became the scene of a horrific massacre. Gunfire erupted, and Ryan, along with 4 others, was killed. This act of violence was a prelude to the greater tragedy that was about to unfold. Back in Jonestown, Jones's final, horrifying plan was set into motion. That night, the settlement was gripped by a pervasive sense of dread. Jones, in a final, desperate speech, framed the coming tragedy as an act of revolutionary defiance against a world that sought to destroy them. His words, filled with delusional rhetoric and apocalyptic visions, were a grotesque precursor to the night's events. The method chosen for the mass death was both brutal and insidious. Jones orchestrated a mass suicide, presenting it as an act of liberation. The residents of Jonestown were coerced into drinking a concoction of cyanide-laced Kool-Aid. This vile mixture, described as a red drink, was served to children and adults alike. The drink, associated with innocence and childhood, became a vessel of death. The scene that followed was one of unspeakable horror. As the night fell, the jungle around Jonestown was filled with the cries of the dying and the silence of the dead. The once vibrant settlement turned into a macabre graveyard. Over 900 individuals, men, women, and children, perished that night. Their bodies lay scattered across the grounds, a stark and haunting testament to the horror that had unfolded. In the aftermath of the massacre, the world was confronted with the grim reality of Jonestown. The discovery of the bodies was a shocking and somber event. The images of the aftermath, with rows of lifeless bodies, remain some of the most haunting in modern history. The tragedy was a sobering reminder of the destructive power of unchecked authority and the dangers of blind obedience. The Jonestown Massacre has left an indelible mark on history, serving as a chilling example of the dangers of charismatic leadership and the perils of isolation. The settlement's eerie silence and the haunting legacy of the massacre are a reminder of the fragility of human dreams and the darkness that can lurk behind the most seemingly innocent of promises. As we reflect on the story of Jonestown, let us remember the lives lost and the lessons learned. The tragedy serves as a powerful reminder of the need for vigilance against the seductive pull of unchecked authority and the importance of questioning even the most compelling promises of salvation. The jungle of Guyana, now forever tainted by the horrors of Jonestown, remains a silent witness to the tragedy that unfolded within its depths. The shadows of Jonestown linger, a chilling reminder of a dream turned into a nightmare. The echoes of that fateful night continue to haunt, a stark reminder of the dark side of human nature and the devastating consequences of blind devotion. The BTK Killer. In the heartland of America, nestled in the plains of Kansas, lies the city of Wichita, a place of seemingly ordinary life, where the sunsets paint the skies in hues of tranquility. But beneath this calm exterior, a sinister presence lurked, casting a long, dark shadow over the city. This is the chilling tale of Dennis Rader, the man behind the notorious alias BTK. Dennis Lynn Rader was born on March 9, 1945, in Pittsburgh, Kansas. From an early age, Rader exhibited disturbing traits. His childhood was marked by cruelty and a fascination with death, a troubling combination that would later manifest in his heinous crimes. As a young boy, Rader was known for torturing animals and exhibiting violent fantasies. The seeds of his malevolence were sown early, nurtured in the dark recesses of his psyche. By the 1970s, Rader had settled into the seemingly mundane life of an upstanding citizen. He was a husband, a father, and a churchgoer. On the surface, he appeared to be an ordinary member of the Wichita community. But beneath this facade of normalcy, Rader harbored a twisted alter ego, a monster driven by a compulsion to kill. He dubbed himself BTK, an acronym that stood for bind, torture, kill, a chilling manifesto of his methods. In January 1974, Rader embarked on his dark crusade. His first victims were the Otero family, Joseph, Julie, and their 2 children, who lived in a modest home on 10th Street. The night of January 15th was cold and silent, with only the crunch of snow underfoot to break the stillness. Rader entered the Otero home, blending into the shadows like a predator stalking its prey. The Oteros were a family marked by warmth and love, a stark contrast to the horror that awaited them. That night, Rader's intrusion shattered their peace. The scene that followed was nothing short of macabre. Rader bound the family members, one by one, with ropes, taking sadistic pleasure in their terror. He then proceeded to torture them, enjoying the control he exerted over their fates. Julie Otero was found with a plastic bag over her head, a chilling testament to the brutality of Rader's methods. The children, Josephine and Joey, were also murdered, their lives snuffed out in a moment of unimaginable cruelty. The Otero home, once a haven, became a crime scene of unimaginable horror. Following the Otero murders, Rader remained silent for several years, leaving the Wichita community in a state of anxiety and fear. He seemed to vanish into the shadows, his terror temporarily suspended. But in 1977, Rader reemerged with a new series of murders, including those of the Rader family. Each crime was meticulously planned, leaving behind a trail of fear and confusion. In 1985, Rader's killing spree seemed to slow, but his presence never truly faded. He continued to taunt the police and the media with cryptic letters and chilling phone calls, maintaining an aura of menace even in his absence. His correspondence included detailed descriptions of his crimes and bizarre demands for public attention, adding a layer of psychological torment to his already horrifying acts. The search for the BTK Killer was both relentless and frustrating. For years, law enforcement and the community struggled to identify the man behind the terror. Rader's ability to evade capture was aided by his meticulous planning and his ability to blend into society. He used his position as a compliance officer to gather information, exploiting his role to stay one step ahead of the authorities. The case remained cold for decades, with Rader's identity remaining a mystery. His taunting letters and cryptic messages only served to heighten the sense of dread in Wichita. The killer's ability to remain hidden despite the intense scrutiny of law enforcement was both infuriating and terrifying for the victims' families and the community at large. The turning point in the investigation came in 2004. Dennis Rader, now a seemingly ordinary man with a family and a respectable job, made the fatal mistake of contacting the police once more. In a brazen move, Rader sent a letter to a local newspaper, revealing details about his crimes that had not been made public. This letter, combined with the DNA evidence that had been collected over the years, eventually led to Rader's capture. In February 2005, Rader was arrested at his home, a place that had once been a sanctuary of normalcy but was now the site of a horrifying revelation. The arrest of Dennis Rader was a chilling moment of justice. The man who had evoked fear across Wichita was now unmasked, his facade of normalcy shattered. The trial of Dennis Rader was a media sensation, with the courtroom becoming a stage for the dramatic unveiling of the man behind the BTK persona. Rader's confession was a horrifying glimpse into his twisted mind. He described his crimes with a disturbing level of detail and detachment, revealing the full extent of his depravity. In August 2005, Rader was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. The verdict was a somber resolution to a case that had haunted Wichita for decades. The community, while relieved to see justice served, was left with the haunting memory of the BTK Killer's reign of terror. The impact of the BTK Killer's crimes extends beyond the immediate horror of his actions. Rader's reign of terror left a lasting scar on the Wichita community, forever altering the perception of safety and normalcy. The case became a chilling reminder of the dark potential that can lurk behind even the most seemingly ordinary facades. Dennis Rader's story is a haunting exploration of evil, a reminder of the depths of human depravity and the fragility of the veneer of normalcy. His crimes, meticulously planned and executed, serve as a chilling testament to the darkness that can exist within individuals. As we reflect on the story of Dennis Rader, the BTK Killer, we are reminded of the darkness that can reside within the most unsuspecting of places. Wichita, a city marked by the terror of the BTK Killer, continues to grapple with the legacy of his crimes. The shadows of Rader's reign of terror linger, a haunting reminder of the evil that can lurk behind even the most ordinary faces. The story of the BTK Killer is not just a tale of crime and punishment. It is a chilling exploration of the nature of evil and the complexities of human behavior. As we remember the victims and the impact of Rader's actions, we are reminded of the importance of vigilance and the need to confront the darkness that can sometimes hide in plain sight. Thank you so very much for listening to these two separate, but very awful and horrifying true crime stories. Hopefully, you still have some hope for humans, as these two stories depict some of the worst of our kind. Nevertheless, we hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with some of your friends who also like true crime. There are many more videos to come, so make sure to stay tuned. All the best. From us, to you.